Hello! Today, I want to do something really kind of simple and take a break from some other videos I'm working on that are a bit bigger in scope. I just want to do a super simple mix breakdown of a song that is out. You can go listen to it. It's called Dancing with a Ghost by Foreign Republic. It's off of his newest album, My Lovely Enemy. I mixed this song in May of 2024. So it's been about 7 or 8 months. So I'm not mixing it right from scratch. We're just going over an already completed session. I would like to do some videos where I mix something brand new to me and you guys kind of see my thoughts and feelings as I go through that. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, then let me know. So let's take a look at this. Not a lot of tracks, including buses and all that kind of stuff. We have 89 tracks in the edit window. That's not a lot. A good part of that is thanks to the drums were just a loop. They were not individual tracks, which I do prefer. You know, if the producer or the artist has access to those individual multis, then I do prefer that. But this is just a loop. I did kind of, you can see here, take the kick drum and the hi-hat into one track and then the snare into the other track. That wasn't any kind of like AI separation or whatever. It is a really simple trick. If the drums are just a loop and pretty consistent, then I'll show you what I did. So this is the full original drum loop. And so when you have a loop that is simple like that and you line it up well enough to the grid, my issue was simply just that the snare was too loud and I wanted to quiet it down. I could draw automation, do a little bit of this, and just kind of copy and paste that, but that's kind of ridiculous to do that. So what I did, and kind of any DAW should have this stock effect. In Logic it's called tremolo. I put that in dual mono. So typically in stereo or mono, what it will do is just kind of pan it from left to right with whatever kind of settings you set. In dual mono, it turns into a volume envelope. So I couple the left and right together, set the smoothing to 0% so that it's hard starts and stops. And you can hear already kind of what it's doing. So I kind of do it like that. So then I've got the snare separate. And then I can just invert what I've done so that it's off when the snare hits on this track, on the kick and hat track, and then on when the snare hits on the snare track. So that's what I did. So like I said, I just wanted the snare a little bit quieter, almost 2 decibels quieter. And then I also took some lows out of just the kick drum, nothing out of the snare drum. And then because the drums were just a loop, there is nothing on the drum bus. That actually, even looking at it now, I don't believe it. Because usually my drum bus has, you know, compression, saturation, parallel stuff going on, multiband, whatever. Usually it's like super complicated, but this is kind of dirtied up and compressed and such already. Doesn't really need anything. So the bass here as well is just a loop. Let's listen to that. So with no effects, it still sounds good. It sounds like it has some compression on it already. So super slow attack, relatively, with the 1176. You know, like I said, it already sounded like it had some compression on it, so I didn't want to overdo it. I kind of wanted it to ebb and flow a bit differently, so pull that out there, and then just a crazy high shelf and some other filters. I think it brings out a lot of nice texture, but in doing so, it brings out some of the hiss and the noise. So I got super meticulous with the Pro Q. After that, cut out a lot of the hiss. Listen to that. Yeah, there's none of the instrument in there. It's just noise. Did a tiny little boost here. This is on the 30 decibels kind of looky, so yeah, it's about 2.5 decibels. So those slides and the picking of the bass, I don't know if it was picked or done with their finger. And then there's kind of a ringing in the recording. It's just kind of always on. Yeah. It's like a test tone that's always there. So I took that out. And that's pretty much all I did for the bass. We can see that, the drums and the bass and other things change at the end. We'll get to that. And then we have 2 guitar tracks, guitar melody and guitar washi. So this is kind of the chords, but with a lot of baked in reverb. And then guitar melody. Let's take off all the processing on that guitar and the guitar bus and listen. So just immediately to me, those squeaks are god-awful. Gotta go. So what I did here, just kind of kissing it a little bit with the 1176, just to even out some of that performance versus the the palm mutes versus the full strums. Then with a channel EQ, this is about kind of the harsher frequencies, and that's kind of where the squeaks are living as well. This plugin, you might have not seen this before. Allow me to introduce it to you. I really like it. So you've heard of Soothe 2, probably. This is that, but a bit on steroids and also cheaper. I do have Soothe, but I've had this for longer. DSEQ3 is what it's called. And I think it's a lot more versatile than Soothe is. I go for this when I want something that I can get very detailed with and very nitpicky. Soothe, I typically won't put on individual instruments. I'll put it on buses. So with DSEQ, I did this. So it works in the same way that Soothe does as well, where you kind of take the EQ band and you push it up to tell it, hey, take more of this out. And so the frequency spectrum that's going down is what it's taking out of the signal. So in the low end, it actually has a delta button so that you can listen to exactly what it's doing. So let's listen to that. I can already kind of see definitely the squeaks are going away. So let's listen. So for sure, I'm mainly focusing on the sliding of the fingers across the strings, because that was pretty overbearing. And then some low end, just when it gets a bit too much in certain spots, it's helping to even that out as well. And then on the guitar bus as a whole, I have these 3 dynamic bands. Yeah, just getting rid of some harshness. That super like 2 to 4 range here, and then a little bit extra up at 8.3. Then looking at the piano, we have detuned awesomeness. Okay. It looks like I did not do anything, just the volume. Took it down a bit. And then right below it, I did some stuff with like slowing it down. We'll get to that outro. I'm excited. And then here we have this piano. So I only have one plugin on this, and that's the Kilohertz stereo. This is probably like my most used plugin, second to the stock EQ. I'm always kind of pulling it up and pulling the width back on certain stuff and automating it between the verse and the chorus to help things kind of breathe a bit. I mix through, and this song included a mix bus chain that's super simple. It's a pair of SSL EQs, and then also the SPL Big, the stereo widening. And sometimes that widening is really apparent. It is unbelievably obtrusive to pianos, specifically, for whatever reason, like acoustic, grand, or upright pianos. Just something about the SPL Big, you turn the dial 1 detent and it explodes. When I'm mixing through that, which is 100% of the time, I'll pull back the width on some stuff to compensate for that. Not only to compensate for that, but also just to, pull things in. So that's all I've got on the piano here. This isn't the original kind of piano file. It's just called Audio 33, and the file name is just the session name. So this might have been bounced down to audio at some point previously with some other effects on it. It doesn't. I mean, this sounds pretty much like I remember it being sent to me. And then also some EQ on the bus. So mainly this is there for the kind of plucky synth. It's doing a lot of work for that. But then also in the piano, the acoustic piano, sometimes it's pulling back from that. And then for the vocals of the song, I have them separated between lead and backing. So these lead vocals have actually already been bounced down with all their effects printed. I was probably using some hardware and just wanted to free those up. But let me show you what kind of the vocal chain is typically. So I've pulled in the original vocal file. So I typically just kind of have this vocal chain as a preset and then change it out, switch effects around maybe, bypass stuff if it's not working. So let's listen to the untouched vocal.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence. Today I'm feeling a little bit nebulous.
So I start with an 1176.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence. Today I'm feeling a little bit nebulous.
So taming those, at the beginning of the phrase, really going for it, and then pulls back almost immediately. There's also these phrases that he yells quite loud.
And I'm so stuck in time.
And then I go to the Hitsville EQ, which just little dabs here and there pull out this sub band almost all the way, because it gets rid of some of that low end rumble. But if it is a lower toned guy or a lower toned girl, then sometimes that it can pull out too much. So let me boost it all the way up so we can listen to what it's grabbing.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
I mean, it's barely doing anything on this. So for that reason, pulled it all the way down. And then you can see the frequencies that each of these knobs are assigned to. And I'm doing 1 decibel at 5K, -1 at 320, +1 at 130. I just like the tone of it. I like how it sounds. And then on from that, I go to multiband dynamics, the Pro MB. So this is just to boost a little bit of high end, but then tame them immediately if they get to be too much.
Better than show me the evidence.
And then here I have an honest God de-esser, because sometimes it's just a lot. And that's just how it be.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
I'll typically pull it down to around 4K, 5K. And then I have EQ with kind of a bit finer control. It's mainly here, though, for the high cut and the low cut. So low cut, I'm sure, you can understand, but high cut, it's actually not all that uncommon. I just don't see it discussed a lot. A lot of the time, I'll get a vocal with like a disgusting amount of high-end sizzle that isn't good. That it's just especially with like some cheaper products, this was recorded with an AT4040 into a Scarlett Solo Gen 2 or 3. And so not to call out that chain specifically, but just to give an example of like that caliber, a lot of the time that just has a bad sound to the super high end, like 17 to 20. So I pull it out super harsh. 96 dB per octave at 18. Ringing due to phase isn't really an issue that high. But then right kind of below it, I have a 30 dB per octave, which is still massive, but right here.
If I'm getting better, then show me the
It's pulling out just a little bit of that super high end. That just isn't good. I mean, I've soloed it. Let me know if you can even hear it. I can. On my speakers, I can for sure. If you're just on your phone or something, or YouTube has taken it and massacred it, I don't know. But it's just unpleasant. So I pull it out. And then Shapeshifter by Aberrant DSP, I don't know. It is a super harsh compression that is so cool. So if I just like slam it.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
I say slam it, we're going 4-to-1 ratio. That's an 1176, and 1176 doesn't sound like that. So, I mean, what?
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
It's just a ridiculous amount of compression. It's kind of like a multiband compression, kind of like OTT, which, funnily enough, I have OTT in the chain. But I'm super delicate with this, typically like 1.3, and then I pull back the dry and wet. Sometimes that's just too heavy-handed. With more pop production like this, where it is super kind of in your face and you want it to be compressed and loud, then this is awesome for it. And then OTT at 8% depth with some shelving or whatever is going on here. These two in tandem.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
I mean, you can hear it's just flatlining that signal to a certain degree. And it's also changing the tone of it EQ wise. Another EQ here. I honestly, I said that, a lot of these times, not the whole chain is used. This EQ is probably the first to go, almost always. And then DSEQ3 makes an appearance. This is always changes song to song. I just use it to help me kind of get out the super pokey harmonics in the vocal that are sometimes just like anything from maybe 600 to like 1.2K is like, I don't know, something about it just drives me insane. And if it's left untamed to any degree, I just go wild, dude. I can't stand it. So like I said, I'll tailor it. I might have done something more akin to this. And then another EQ to kind of taper off the high end from all this compressing and multiband stuff. And then I finish it off with a limiter at the end.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
I don't want anything super heavy, just something to snip away at super high peaks as compared to the rest of the signal. So you see all these plugins and it's like, dude, what? Just use 1176 and be done with it. Instead of having an 1176 do 100% of the compression and a channel EQ do 100% of the EQ, I split that up between several different modules so that, this one's only doing 15%, this one's doing 30%. And so it's a bit more gradual and a bit more realistic doing it that way. I'll mute all the sends and we'll kind of go through them one by one. So for sends, I'm sending it to 8 different places. So let's go through those.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
First one's a reverb, kind of a plate reverb, just a little plate. And then second one is a delay.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
Third one is another delay.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
So just, it's super delayed, but it's also really quiet so that it doesn't intrude on the vocal while it's happening, but after the vocal's ended, brings it to a nice gradual lowering. And then after that, we have a room reverb.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
So that's our verb from Waves. After that, we have another delay. This one's more or less a slap.
If I'm getting better, then show me the...
Some songs I have it really noticeable, other songs I don't. This one is one of those ones that it's not super noticeable. Let me turn it up for a second.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
After that, we have a super long decaying reverb that is not there all the time. I automate it. I never think of it as like a main reverb, if that makes sense.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
So you can maybe hear that. Let me turn it up.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
So that's just super long and lush. And then after that, we've got a stereo slap delay, ping pong slap delay.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
And then finally, final send, we've got what I call wider. So that's just something akin to like Microshift by Sound Toys or Wider by Infected Mushroom or, you know, a Studio D chorus. Here I've opted for just the Microshift. And then what I do is take away the mid channel of what that's doing. So I'm only getting the side information that's added from the, you know, stereo doubler or chorus effect or whatever I've got.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
So that's immediately like, oh, there's a widener on that, but I can really have a fine tune of how much.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
So that's like, you know, an effect, but bring it down.
I'm feeling a little bit nebulous.
That's just a touch, just to help it sit more in the rest of the production. Add all those together at once.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
And then on the sends themselves, obviously there's more than just the reverb plugin or just the delay. I have other effects that kind of help it either sit better or make it more noticeable. So kind of the polar opposites from one of each other. So on the reverb, I have a sample delay because the little plate plugin doesn't have a pre-delay. That's you can change. So I just do it with the sample delay, and this changes from song to song, section to section sometimes. Then after that, a compressor. Then after that, an EQ. And then this Head Crusher Free, a sick distortion tone box, has a sound to it that I really like. And on reverbs, actually, it's really useful in helping things cut through. And then DSEQ, we've gone over that, kind of what that does, a resonance tamer type thing. And then another compressor. Delays, I've got a distortion and the Kiloheart stereo, just pulling it back a little bit. So on the delay, for example, if I turn this off and let it just kind of go full wideness.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
And pull it back in.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
That just sits a bit better. It isn't as distracting when it's so pushed out. And then we have doubles for almost every vocal. So these are the doubles for the verses.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence.
So he just recorded it 3 times, decided this one's the lead, this one's the best, it's going to be the lead, and then these other ones are for the left and for the right. So those go through the same chain that we talked about before, but then I EQ them differently to help them not be so intrusive. We also have some delay throws every now and then.
Of the dark.
These are actually mono, which I think is fun.
Won't be scared of the dark.
So I've just got that on a separate track and bounced to audio just for control purposes, to kind of control the tapering of it and to, help it. Maybe I don't want the delay, because you can see he didn't say dark perfectly on the beat. There is some play there, but I want the delay to be dead on because that's going to compound itself in how much it's delayed, and you're going to notice it. So I have that ability to kind of customize where it is, and so that's why I've done that. And then the next line has that delay through it too. And then we get to the chorus, and the chorus typically also has the same chain. For this one in particular, I decided to tune it.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
I don't really, for Foreign Republic stuff, I don't edit and I don't tune. He does that himself. But this is tuned pretty hard. Retune C10, I think if I wanted it to be noticeable, I'd definitely achieved that. Typically, I'll do like a 30 retune speed, maybe a 40. This is, it's very obvious, very kind of not T-Pain necessarily, not that quick, but you know what I mean. Let's turn that off.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
Let's play that in context.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
And turn the tuning back on.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
I just wanted everything super tight because it's a very layered vocal, and I wanted things to sit together. Doubles for the chorus as well.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
And then backing vocals, so let's listen to those soloed.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
So there's no harmonies in that yet. I think there are in the next chorus. These are just octaves. So let's listen. This is a falsetto in his head voice.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
And so that went through the same vocal chain, but then additionally went through that head crusher kind of distortion, and then an EQ to take out a bunch of the mid-range so that it didn't interfere with the leads, and then DSEQ. So what's that doing?
Nobody knows.
Just taking out some of those super pokey resonances. Then we've got low.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
So an octave below. And then mid.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
So it's actually, yeah, low is actually 2 octaves below, and mid is an octave
Spend a
below.
little time.
So that's got distortion on it, EQ on it, and DSEQ on it. And then it also gets sent to my main reverb and delay buses. Going on to the second verse.
If I turn on my rose
We have some backing vocals here as well.
If I could turn on my rose to rights.
So that's just like a 4-inch shift. That's probably a little altar boy. So important thing that I want to say just to anybody who's recording themselves and doesn't have an engineer to tell them this right then and there. If you're going to do things like Little Altar Boy, where you're just 4-inch shifting, pitch shifting, stuff like that, do a whole different take for that. Instead of just duplicating your already existing recording and then changing that. Because you can get some weird phasing issues and cancellations, and it can sound super thin instead of, big and broad sometimes. I know that Matthew, I've told him to do that, And he always does that. It's always a different recording. It's never the same one, just duplicated. So there you go. Tip of the day, always record more. And then we finally get some harmonies right here.
Maybe at the bottom, but at least my fall is not far.
That's actually me.
Maybe at the bottom, but at least.
And I think I did the harmonies for the chorus as well.
Spend a little time with me when nobody knows. Spend a little time with me when nobody knows. Dying on the inside, dancing with the ghost.
So there we go. That's the main mix of the main song done. And that, if you listened to it as a single, pretty much is where the song ends. There's a little outro. But on the album specifically, there is an album version. And that actually, the album version was the original version with a different outro, and then we made the single version after. I'm super happy with how this turned out. He said, I want there to be an outro. I don't know what to do. You do it. That happens quite frequently. And what I love to do is just completely change the song and the direction it's going for. And so if you haven't heard this song yet, or at least not the album version, let me introduce you to this outro that produced by me, and then he went back and wrote extra words for it. Here we go.
Dying on the inside, dancing with the ghost. Dancing with the ghost. Sick of fucking trying. There can't be more.
So, yeah, that's a bit different, isn't it? So there's actually one measure of 5/4, so we just get an extra beat for that drum fill. And the drums change completely. So let's go through all those. A bit of noise, kind of vinyl crackle type stuff. And so really just making sure that only specific frequencies get let through. Let's listen to that without. Yep. Making it a little bit more mono, not completely, but mostly in the center. And then really is kind of slamming it with OTT. And then a sample from a song, which I'm not going to make any effort to cover up. Oh well, who cares? Just a little, like a cowbell chime thing that I played with the pitch that we've got. Some like DJ stuff going there, and then the main kick drum, just a sample. This fill. That might be like addictive drums. So we've got some multi-band stuff going on. And then some parallel compression with the distressor. This is kind of a cut-up drum loop. With some processing on it, so let's see what I did. Compressor. Just taming that kick drum a little bit. Multiband. Help tame some of the higher frequencies. A Pultec. Taking out some lows at 30. Boosting and attenuating. Boosting at 10. Pulling down at 5K. Pro Q. Getting super detailed with it. Some dynamic stuff in the high end. Because, again, it's just a loop. It's not samples individually. I don't remember where this loop came from. And then cutting out a bunch of low end from it because we have that main kick drum. This might be me actually playing drums on the kit that's back there, boosting the width a little bit. It is already super wide. And then here, yeah, I'm doing that trick to take down this snare. And then bass, this is something, I'm pretty sure this is from a Kontakt library. I think it's called Retrograde Bass by Teletone Audio. That's what it is, on the palm muted patch. Bunch of processing going on, so let's take all that off and listen. So first a limiter. I did want to be pretty heavy in the processing on this guy to kind of make it seem more like it's a sample that's been pulled from somewhere and processed and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's gone through the woes of tape and vinyl and whatnot, so I wanted to be pretty smacking it with whatever I was doing. I say that, and then this compressor is gentle as hell. But we got rid of most of the peaks and transients with the limiter. Then an EQ, boost some of those mids, take away some of the highs. And there might have been some dead spots in the bass itself, so pulled those in. And then a match EQ. What I did is I match EQ'd this bass to the original, so that it wasn't as huge of a jump between the two. This is the original bass idea I had that was like chopping up the OG bass line. The tone and emotion of that just completely different from the way that we ended up wanting it to go, so I wrote something different. And then piano's bus kind of becomes a synth bus too. So, I mean, how much more simple can you get? And then a drone. Tamed a bit. You can see it kind of breathing. So I tamed that a bit with an LA2A. And then tamed it even more with the DSEQ. Then an organ. And then some effects that were added. Let's see. Kind of a super classic, like 90s hip-hop kind of sound effect. And then I think that's just a saw with some portamento on it that I slowed the delay down on to kind of get that effect. And then all of the kind of DJ sample scratches. All this grayed out stuff, you can see what originally made up all those scratches. It was a bit of a chore, and some of these are even in themselves like bounce down to audio in place, because this is like 4 different samples happening.
Like this, son.
Some of them are splice, some of them are actual, like, genuine. I've crate dug and found some stuff, but I think that's just a super cool vibe, and it's something I hadn't done before. And then there's a scratch subgroup with some effects on it, so let's see. We've got super plate, super subtle reverb, but without it. A little bit dry. So put that on. And then a distressor.
Like this, son.
That's just helping level out things. And then a 160. That really is more for pronouncing the transients of these things. And then a final EQ. Tame some harsh stuff.
Should I just give up and quit? I don't think I'll ever win.
Cord in my wrist.
So we got some Alter Boy stuff here.
No room for this. Give up and quit. I don't think I'll ever win. Fucking trying.
So it's got that
Or denying. Don't give a shit.
same vocal chain on it. So this is like a you know, mono-compatible stereo width. It's just EQ, like different EQ bands at different places in the stereo spectrum. So it, like, you know, if I put an EQ at 500 hertz, then I'm EQing the left channel, and then at 1,000 hertz, I'm EQing the right channel. That's how this works. The problem is it kind of gets head splitting if you're not careful. But when it's on something like this that is sitting super far in the background, then
I'm sick of fucking trying. There can't be more denying. They ask
not
but
that
don't
bad.
give a shit. I wear my heart on my wrist.
So there we go. That's pretty much everything. We do also have the original demo that I was sent, so we can listen to that. So it's called Dancing with the Crows demo. The original lyrics on this song was dying on the inside, dancing with the crows. And I listened to it, and I said, dying on the inside, dancing with a ghost. He's like, shit, you're right. I don't typically do that, like suggest, you know, lyric changes, but I know Matthew. Sometimes I'm just like, what are you talking about? So his kind of mix with his original stuff that he's got.
If I'm getting better, then show me the evidence. Today I'm
Flip back to mine.
feeling a little bit fabulous. There's so many nights lost to my negligence. And I'm so stuck in time.
It's just distorting. Massively. It's basically all it is, just distortion. Let's listen to those original.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows. Dying on the inside, dancing with the crows.
Let's flip back and forth between the original demo and what ended up being.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows. Spend a little time with me where nobody knows. Spend a little time with me where nobody knows. Spend a little time with me where nobody knows. Spend a little time with me where.
So really, I think the main difference, it's loud, and it reaches that same loudness without distorting, and that comes from throughout the entire mix of compressing it, EQing it, things like that. Everything is a lot clearer. I think the original demo is kind of stuffy. Sounds stuffy and pillowy, if that makes sense. And the vocals are a hell of a lot more intelligible. Go through the final touches here. Acapella bus and the instrumental bus. I make these for automation purposes, mostly. And then I just, you know, slap plugins across the vocals and the music separately. So on the acapella stuff, there is a lot, but again, it's just those tiny little percentages that add up. So you can see here, 0.3, 0.09, and then nothing. Multiband stuff, Oxford Inflator,
Time with me where nobody knows.
DSEQ, more EQ, some soft clipping,
Nobody
which
knows.
sometimes isn't on or isn't being hit. It seems like it is, though.
Spend a little time with me where nobody
Less than 1 decibel
knows.
of clipping. And then a UAD Baxandall EQ that isn't enabled because I no longer own any UAD hardware. And then an EQ, taking out some of those final super nasally kind of frequencies.
Spend time with me when nobody knows.
And then L2.
Spend a little time with me when nobody knows.
Just shaving it ever so slightly. And then on the instrumental stuff, Ozone. So I'll be honest, I clicked the, Ozone Master Assistant, let it do its thing, and then tweak it from there. Sometimes it just gets it completely wrong. And it it will tell me that this is folk. But, I never leave it exactly as it says it should be. Gets it in the ballpark. And sometimes when I'm working on it endlessly for hours without, a reference track, I'm just like, is the tonal balance in the right place? Is the high end too much? Is the bass too much? And so this will kind of reference however hundreds of thousands of songs it has in its data set, and then tell me how close I am. Taking away some lows, adding some highs, adding some mid. There's 1 decibel in the mid. Stabilizer. So kind of like the Gullfoss. Pull to 6%. Then impact. 41% of the minuscule amounts that we've got going on here. Imaging, so like stereo width and stereo de-width thing. So the low end really isn't changing. Mid-range really isn't changing. It's just in the super high end that's changing. So let's kind of bypass that. It just helps things sit in the high end a bit further back, not so much in your face. And then dynamic EQ. And then it will also suggest a limiter. Sometimes I keep that if I feel like I could benefit from having a limiter on it. This is actually pretty even anyway, so I didn't feel like I needed it. And then my I/O. So let's take everything off the mix bus here. It's now substantially quieter. Let's actually keep these limiters. So I'll turn on and off. I'll go from 0% wet to 100% wet. My mix bus is 2 SSL preamps and a SPL big. I don't have any bus compression in hardware because that changes so variably from song to song, and I don't really want to mix through that. I don't really want to put myself in that box. Let's hear without and then with, and we'll go back and forth. Just pay attention to the dry and wet.
Spend a little time with me when nobody knows. Dying on the inside, dancing with the ghost. Spend a little time with me when nobody knows.
Big difference. Stereo width is great, and I think with it off, it has more of that pillowy sound that the original demo kind of suffered from. Of course, with it off, it's not going to sound like my mix because I mixed through it, but still interesting to hear what it's done and how it's influenced me. And then we have another Ozone instance that, again, admittedly, was just that thing of like, oh, Master Assistant, and then let me tweak the hell out of it. So some EQ,
Spend a little time with me when
stabilizer,
nobody
impact,
knows.
imager, dynamic EQ. So the same modules that I had on the instrumental. Let's bypass and unbypass. Listen.
Spend a little time with me when nobody knows. Dying on the inside, dancing with the ghost.
It just sounds a bit more exciting. Has a bit more hype to it with these modules that we've got on here. And then the T-Rex 1.
Spend a little time with me when nobody knows. Dying on the inside, dancing with the ghost.
That's a big volume push. I'll be honest. This was more closer to the beginning of me doing hardware stuff, and I had the mix bus at that point, and the T-Rex is something that I used all the time before I got the hardware. Now, in this day and age, I have decided that the hardware replaces the T-Rex or causes it to not be needed so much. Because look at what I'm doing with it. I'm adding stereo width, bass punch, transient stuff is being done. Analog knob. Well, I've got an analog knob. I've got a bunch of them in the rack on my mix bus, so I don't need this. Air. I've got on the Let me take a picture. It's the SSL 6-channel preamps, so it's kind of the channel strip. I don't use the compression on it. I've tried it. I don't like it. Moving on. The EQ on it, I really do like. So I've got a little bit of high-end boost. I've got a little bit of low-end boost. So with that, I don't need this air knob. I don't need this bass punch knob. You know, T-Rex is kind of replaced. I just kept it on this song out of, hubris. Oh, I use it all the time, so I'll just keep using it. I actually don't feel like if I were to do this again, I wouldn't want it. Even just flipping it on and off right now in headphones, which I'm not used to.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
Even with the loudness increase, I prefer it without. I'll keep it on because that's the way it is, but anywho. Multiband compression over the bus.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
Again, just a dab will do ya. Not a lot. First limiter of 3. Sometimes I use less. Typically don't use more.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows. Dying on the
So it's just
inside.
taking care of those initial pokes that are being caused by the drums. The real big boys.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows. With me where nobody knows.
And these limiter settings change from song to song. For the first limiter, IRC1 and then IRC2. For the second limiter, sometimes I'll use the soft clipping. If I'm going to do clipping, usually I'll opt for a different one. This one, doing like a decibel on the mix bus, is pretty good, the standard clip from Sir Audio Tools. But this soft clip has its place as well. Didn't do any kind of stereo independence. It had that vibe of like, if you turned this on in the 80s, imagine it with an 80s filter on it, I don't know, and played it on a record, you'd get those like kind of super pumpy, unkemptness, I suppose. I don't know how else to describe it. I just think the vibe of it being super heavy-handed fits and works. So that's why I did that. Let's check loudness meter.
Spend a little time with me where nobody knows.
Loud as shit.
Dying on the
But that's just the nature of the beast. So I think that's it. I think that's all. I want to do this with more songs. And if you would like to have a song mixed by yours truly, then feel free to message me. Check out my website in the description. It's got all the links to it. Like I said, I love to do that thing where I record myself for the first time mixing something. You guys can, I'll talk you through it. If you're interested in that kind of thing, then let me know. This is one of those songs that's mostly just kind of prefabs and loops just dragged in. So they're already processed. The drums aren't real. The bass isn't bass. I don't know. But it wasn't like recorded specifically for the song. There wasn't a Dancing with a Ghost recording session. That's what I mean. So I would like to do it with a song that is more originally produced, if that makes sense. So subscribe for that, if that sounds like of interest to you. And thank you so much for watching. Please go check out Foreign Republic's My Lovely Enemy album. Check out my website, book me for a mix, and I'll talk to you later.